Utah football lands a four-star wide receiver commit. And what questions do we hope to get answered at Pac-12 Media Days? All that and more on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are available on all platforms, including YouTube. My name is JT Wistcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. On today's show, we're going to be diving into the biggest questions we hope to have answered during Pac-12 Media Days. Also talk a little bit about the Pac-12 media rights deal. But first, we got to start with Utah recruiting because the Utes just landed themselves one heck of a recruit this past week. They brought in four-star wide receiver David Washington as they continue to bolster their 2024 recruiting class. Washington, a 6-foot wide receiver, 185 pounds. He's the nation's number 46 rated wide receiver overall, but he's the number 2 overall prospect in the state of Nevada for the 24 class. Those all according to the 24/7 Sports rankings. During his junior season, he brought in 52 receptions for 826 yards and 7 touchdowns in 11 games. Blair Ungolo, and I apologize if I mispronounced that name, of 24/7 Sports dove deeper into the commitment. And this is the quote from that article by 24/7 Sports Ungolo. The coaching staff being there for a while, the stability of the program, Coach Alvis Whitted and what he has produced. These all talking about reasons that not Whitted, but Washington committed to Utah. Just talk about what he has produced. Those were all big things I looked at when making my decision. Washington told 24/7 Sports, I know I can go there and be developed. Something that stood out to me on my visit was just watching their highlights and just envisioning how I could fit into that offense. So I think the first thing, which this is a great recruit, right? I mean, this is now the second recruiting class where Utah will have brought in a 4-star receiver. I can't remember if they did it in the 21 off the top of my head. I'm sure you guys in the comments can remind me of that. But, going back to Mikey Matthews last year was a huge get, right? And a guy who was already making a couple plays during spring ball. I mean, think back to, 70 plus yards in the spring game, and most of those coming off the second half, just getting it going a little bit. I just think Matthews is a guy who's going to flash a lot early on in his freshman year. And then for the next couple of years, when you look at Devon Vele, Brant Keith, Thomas Yasmin will all be gone, the mainstays in the passing game this season. You're looking ahead to Utah football. I think that's where guys like Mikey Matthews and now Washington as well can really factor into that. I think when you talk about Washington's commitment, first, before we dive into why he committed, we should talk a little bit more about what Utah's getting, right? I mean, just turn on this guy's tape, you can see he's a guy who's got long arms. We mentioned 6 feet tall, but really long, lanky, which I really like in a receiver. Good speed, really good releases as well. Quickness, not just off the line and in and out of his breaks, his releases, but just makes really good adjustments to the ball as well. Does a good job slowing down his routes on the outside. If he wins deep, he does a good job of waiting on the ball to come back to him. And look, Washington's a really good receiver, so he beat a couple of he's able to overrun his quarterback at times, so he did a good job slowing down to make those plays. He's a guy who can win at all 3 levels, has an impressive catch radius. I just love the way he adjusts to balls in the air too, not just in terms of adjusting his route or just his speed, but also just making a back shoulder grab, being able to bring it in with one hand if the DB's grabbing his other hand, things like that. Does a really good job making contested catches overall. He's got a good vertical too. He can go up there and high point balls, bring him in, control and complete the catch process to the ground. Does a really good job changing direction as well. Slippery in the open field, hard to bring down. Runs really hard with the ball in his hands too, which is something I love and something no doubt that Utah fans would love to see in a pass catcher after games like Dalton Kincaid had against USC, where he was just a yards after the catch monster overall. He gets in and out of his breaks quickly, as I mentioned, fights for yards, slips out of tackles, does a good job coming back to the ball too. He doesn't give up on broken plays, so always working to get back to that. So I think Washington's the guy who can play inside or out. Honestly, I'm really excited about his long-term potential with the Utes, and a guy who, looking ahead next year, I mean, he'll have a chance to make some plays as a true freshman because, as we mentioned, Devon Vele will be gone. Not sure what Money Parks will decide to do. Could depend on the kind of year he has. If he wants to come back, maybe even transfer, if he wants to go to the NFL draft. There are lots of things on the table now when you're a college football player, of course. And, looking as well just at, in general, Washington committing, I think this is just it's a great get for Alvis Whitted, who in his very short time has made quite the impression on the receiver room. I mean, if we're looking to the transfer portal first, we'll look at a guy like Emory Simmons, who I'm really excited to get going in fall camp once it gets underway. And I think he's a guy who's going to be bringing some passes for this Utah team. You look at another guy too, and Micah Pittman, who committed to this Utah football team. Both those guys aren't here without Alvis Whitted's impact. Those were the first kind of guys he's brought in, and this is the first kind of big recruit that Coach Whitted has brought in. And he mentioned that what Coach Whitted has produced, he mentioned, right? That's going back to those Wisconsin. Number one, he's worked with Devontae Adams. So that's a big thing. He's not like, he didn't produce Devontae Adams, but he helped Devontae Adams get better, no doubt, as his receivers coach and still had some type of an impact on the immense success that Devontae Adams has had at the NFL level overall. And then also when you're looking at the collegiate level, some of those Wisconsin receivers, I think Quintez Cephas, and there might be one or two other ones I'm forgetting. Those are guys who have played in the NFL, which is, of course, all of these guys' goal, right? To go into college, get the education. I actually think I remember reading in Blair Ungelo's piece now, and if you guys want more, once again, make sure you guys head over and check that out. In the piece, it actually highlights one of the reasons he chose Utah was he really liked, I want to say it was their real estate program or one of the things like that. So this is a guy who does prioritize academics too, who looks at it like, hey, I can get my degree here. I can also get my skills developed to set me up for the next playing stage of my football career. And of course, going to give him an opportunity to win because we know that Utah football has been able to do that. And they're not just set up for short-term, but long-term success in the Pac-12 at the moment, or honestly, whatever college football conference they end up in. I once again, as we've talked about many a times, it's going to be the Pac-12, but in the off chance that something crazy happens, Utah will be still continue to be a successful football program based on the job they have done in-house, developing talent, recruiting talent, all those type of things. And I think the other thing that Utah offers, especially in terms of receiver standpoint, because look, Utah's brought in some really good recruits, right? But this is a team that is not known for its passing game overall. When you think Utah football, you think about the run game and you think about the defense. Really, you think about, and now the tight ends too as well, right? And then Cam Rising, Tyler Huntley, what they've done at the quarterback position at Utah, I think that's made it more attractive for recruits and why a guy like you see and Isaac Wilson want to come over and be a part of this too. So, but I think there's not that receiver, right, that recently stands out. Devon Vele as for recent receivers, but when you think about the passing game, once again, you're looking at the tight ends. So that's where I think Washington's looking at it like, hey, I can come in here. I might see an opportunity for myself to play early on and kind of transform my game and get it up to a level where I can be producing at a high level with this Utah football team where I have a chance to win and play early. So I think that's what all these guys want to do. And once again, really excited about this. I think it's great that Coach Whitted has made such a quick impact. You see some coaches kind of come in into their new spot, and it takes them a little bit of time to bring in some guys at different programs, I feel like, or get it going. And I feel like Coach Whitted has really hit the ground running in terms of the transfer receivers this team has brought in, and now the recruits as well. Because I really like Washington. Once again, I just think he's a guy who I definitely think he has the potential to lead this team in receiving yards for a season. How can you not? When we went through those stats he had earlier as well. Actually, I don't know if I mentioned his junior season. He brought in 52 receptions for 826 yards and 7 touchdowns and 11 games. And this is a guy who's still growing into his body as well. He does so many things well. And once you get that college coaching and just get your body take that to another level too, it takes your game to another level. So I think that's another thing that I'm really excited about when you talk about Washington getting developed with Coach Whitted and just the reps he's going to get early on too. So it's going to be fun to watch him tear it up in Nevada this coming season and see what kind of senior season he has. And I'm excited to see. We'll see if he's an early enrollee, all that kind of stuff. If he wants to play in his first year, that's probably his first bet to do so, is load up, kind of do what like a Mikey Matthews did. So you make it, first of all, the Utah playbook, very difficult to get down like quickly and hit the ground running, right? So I think that's one thing that helps with enrolling early, getting into spring ball, and all the necessary steps and processes that come with just joining a football program, getting up to speed so you can play in the coming fall. I think that's what will be really important for Washington to get down. So this is a great commitment for the Utah football team once again. Utah beat out a couple of prominent programs for Washington too. So I'm excited for Washington to join the team. And I think he's going to make an impact very quickly. And as soon as 2024, I expect him to be hauling in some passes. The question will be from which quarterback. And speaking of quarterback and a lot of other questions in general, we have a lot more to talk about still because Pac-12 Media Day, we're just about 10 days. We're actually just under 10 days away from Pac-12 Media Days. I believe at the day I'm recording this is actually 8 right now. So we are going to talk about Pac-12 Media Day and the biggest questions we have, not just about Utah, but also some of the media rights deal stuff we hope to have discovered in a moment. But first, I want to talk to you guys about our great friends at Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs make you look good. A Bird Dog stretchy khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Bird Dog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but they fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts because those regular shorts, they're made of a stiff, restricting cotton. And Bird Dogs fixed this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khakis, but stretches so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Bird Dogs use anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. Guys, I love wearing bird dogs. And as a matter of fact, I'm wearing them right now to record this podcast. They've become my short of choice, and they can become your short of choice as well, because you can go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege. That's all caps, no spaces. birddogs.com/lockedoncollege, or enter the promo code lockedoncollege just at birddogs.com for a free Yeti style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedoncollege, one word, all caps, or just enter promo code lockedoncollege at birddogs.com for a free Yeti style tumbler. You won't want to take your bird dogs off. We promise you. Alrighty, now looking back at all things Utah football focus, let's talk some Pac-12 Media Day, right? Because this is the first time we'll have gotten here from Coach Witt. Utah always brings some players to the media days. I think he'll bring Cam Rising. The only reason I say think is just because of the injury ambiguity. They might want to hold him, which once again, when we're going to talk about the biggest questions we hope to have answered during media day. The biggest one obviously revolving around Cam Rising's injury. And look, we've had Porter Larson on the show. We've had Bill Riley on the show, who have also, and thus they've had Cam Rising, Brant Keithley on their show, right? Who have said like, hey, these guys are healthy. They're going to be ready to go right away. But I would just be interested to see like, and we saw a video actually the other day, which I should definitely talk about very soon, as well as Cam Rising throwing. So that's a good sign. So I expect Cam Rising to be the offensive player that goes. Last year, I believe it was Cam Rising and then Clark Phillips, and those were the three players there. If you're looking for a defensive player to go, I'll go my money's on Karene Reed, Junior Tafuna, or I think we could see Cole Bishop. I might go Cole Bishop right now, but I could very well see Karene Reed, who's really become both Reed and Bishop leaders on this team. So as for who's going to go, I expect it to be some combination, like I said, of I still expect Cam to go. If he doesn't go, I think that's interesting. Kyle Whittingham, and then the defensive players I mentioned, who at the moment, other than what I talk about, the more I could see it being Junior, because he'll be entering his third year starting. Karene obviously played a little bit, but so was Cole as well. So that's where that'll be interesting to see. So, but the biggest questions I want to hear is, I just want to hear, I know what Cam has said about his health, because like we said, he's talked about on ESPN 700 on Bill Riley's show with both Bill and Porter. But I want to hear Coach Witt mention Cam and Brant. I want to hear, like, is he going to be like, yes, they're on track to play right away? Or is he going to give more of a coach answer that we've seen? Like a lot of coaches, they know how to use and play the media, right? So is he going to do the more thing was like, well, they're progressing at the right pace, and we're just going to take it a day at a time. Like, that is general coach speak, and very well what we could get at Pac-12 Media Day. So I just want to hear, and then is he going to say different things, right? With Brant, we definitely expect Brant to be ready to go, right? So is he going to say, oh, well, Brant's doing great, he's really good, he'll be ready to go? Oh, and then is he going to err on caution with Cam, or the vice versa of that? Or is he going to say both those guys are doing a good job progressing, and we're excited to get them back on the field here shortly, and not give a timeline and give kind of that indication in general? So back in the spring, he spoke about, Cam was progressing well. They expect to get him back in early kind of fall camp portion. So what is Coach Witt going to say about all that? I think that's going to be very telling to me overall when you talk about the health of these guys, and what the Utah football head coach Kyle Whittingham is willing to divulge about their health updates overall. Moving on to the next question I have heading into Pac-12 Media Days, and Pac-12 Media Days are always interesting, right? Because just in general, when you talk about Coach Witt, as I alluded on a moment ago, it's always interesting to see what he does and doesn't want to answer. But one thing I think he'll be willing to talk about is who stood out during summer workouts. Now, he's not present at all of them, or I don't even know if he was there for the entirety of any of them, honestly. I just don't look with recruiting and everything college coaches have going on. I've seen, and I don't know this about the Utah football program, right? But I've seen enough college coaches talk about how instrumental strength coaches are, because head coaches spend half the year with their team, and the strength coach spends the other half. So that's where I just don't know how many of the workouts in the offseason Kyle Whittingham's at, because he's running a program, and that involves, and not just the present program, but the future of the program as well, which involves a lot of recruiting and crazy stuff overall. But coaches talk. The strength coach talks to the head coach. Other assistant coaches talk who have been around with the strength coach, all that stuff. The talk kind of circulates and everything, right? So we are going to hear who stood out during summer workouts. And that's something I'm very excited to know. Is it some of the new guys who have gotten in there early, like in Emery Simmons, Leavani Mooney, more on him in a second? Is it going to be a Mikey Matthews as a freshman? Is it going to be like a mainstay? Is it going to be like, man, Junior Tafuna has just been a monster? Or one of the other guys, maybe they'll say like Miles Battle came in right away, right? Like lots of guys. I just want to hear like maybe Jaquindon Jackson has gotten even stronger and transformed his body even more as a running back. How's Mekhi Bernard looking? All those type of things. I want to hear about who's the one that stood out during summer workouts. I think that's always interesting to kind of look back on and see who's been making kind of those turning heads early for maybe a physical transformation or just the work they've been putting in the weight room. So I'm excited to hear about that. Next thing I'm excited to hear about is Brandon Rose still QB2, or will he make it more kind of mysterious or just kind of unknown? For example, he said Brandon Rose had the slight edge at the end of spring ball, right? Over Brandon Barnes at the time and then Nate Johnson. And Nate Johnson, of course, didn't really get a fair shake of things because he was dealing with a lot of those injuries. So I didn't feel like we got to see the best of Nate overall. But Will, when he asks, hey, if Cam's, I expect Yogi Roth or whoever's up, Ashley Adamson, whoever's leading the Pac-12 Media Day thing, I expect them to ask. And of course, when the coaches have their availability, they'll be interviewed and asked about this as well. I expect someone to bring up to him, hey, is Brandon, if Cam's not ready to go, who is your backup quarterback? I expect the answer to be something like, well, Brandon Rose was the best guy in spring ball. Something maybe not. He probably won't use best, but he'll say like had the edge in spring ball. But we're still evaluating that position and we'll keep it going. I think it's not going to be clear cut. Like if Cam Rising's ready to go, Brandon Rose is our backup quarterback. That's not a Kyle Whittingham thing. I think he will say things like has the slight edge. Maybe he'll even say he's the favorite, but like has the advantage right now. It's trending towards Brandon Rose, all those kind of things. But I just don't expect a definitive answer from Kyle Whittingham because that's not what he's gotten. So I think he's going to say, well, we feel good about our options, whether you're talking about Brandon Rose, who looked really good in spring ball, whether you're talking about a Bryson Barnes, who's played for us and had success in stretches, or a guy in Nate Johnson, who has also had some success running the football for us that we're excited to see more of him throwing the ball too. I think all those things are on the table. And as I said, I expect Coach Witt to be much more open-ended or just kind of leave it open to debate and speculation about his backup quarterback position, because I think he's going to want to see that battle continued in fall camp a little bit. If Cam's not ready to go, I'd still expect it to be Brandon Rose at this point, but I will not fall out of my chair if Cam's not ready to go and Bryson Barnes is the quarterback that rolls out against Florida. I still think there's room for that possibility. And I'll even give Nate Johnson a slim chance, although at the moment it seems unlikely just because of the injury and some of the things getting up to speed overall. Now, moving on to the next question I want to hear answered. I want to hear him talk a little bit more about Leavani Damuni. As I mentioned, with the Pac-12 Media Day, you get guys like Yogi Roth and Ashley Adamson and some of the other people that have up there, just people who really know ball. So they know Pac-12 ball better than anyone. That's why they're Pac-12 media analysts. So they're going to know a high-profile all Pac-12 linebacker like Leavani Damuni has joined the Utah football program. And I can already hear Yogi asking, like, what excites you most about having Damuni on the team? And look, when you talk about Damuni, I'm sure Coach Witt will dive into it a little bit. You're talking about a guy who had 76 tackles last year, 86 the year before, and even when he came up to Rice-Eccles Stadium, which he's very familiar with playing in Utah, and played his high school ball in Utah, you're talking about a guy who had 12 tackles inside Rice-Eccles Stadium last year. So I expect Coach Witt to get a little bit of a smile, talk about what Damuni can bring to the team, and I think that I just want to hear what he is going to say about his excitement level, bringing him on here, and like I'm sure I'll mention, like, oh, he's got to ramp up to speed with the playbook and some of those things quickly. But we saw how quickly last season a Mahmoud Diabate was able to get up to speed and start in the Florida game. And I expect it to be the same for Damuni. I think that he is going to make an impact very quickly on this team. It could very well be their best inside linebacker for large stretches of the season. As I've said before, I think by the end of the year, Lander Barton will be the best player on this Utah defense. But if you're telling me it was Damuni, I wouldn't be surprised. And then the last thing for biggest questions I want to hear answered, just discussed, is I just want to hear Coach Witt talk a little bit more about the secondary. You know, losing a guy like Clark Phillips III is not something that's easy. We feel good about the guys that are there, right? Whether it's the returners and, as I'm going to blank on their names for a second, Zamaya Vaughn, a JT Broughton, for example, or it's the talented transfer you get in Miles Batter, or some of the young guys starting to make plays when you're looking at the CJ Blocker. They haven't started to make plays, but he'll just say, I'm sure he'll say something along the lines of, we're excited to get Smith, Snowden, and CJ Blocker, some talented freshmen into the recruit, because we've seen 4-star freshmen play on this team early before, right? When you're talking about a Clark Phillips. I can't remember if Jalen Johnson was a 4-star off the top of my head right now, but obviously he played early on as well, too. So I expect one of those guys. So I expect him to feel good about the secondary. And of course, he's going to highlight Sione Vaki, who's just going to be an absolute monster. I'm sure at some point I'll do a most likely like breakout player, breakout candidates. I'd love to. Do you guys think Sione Vaki could qualify? Like he came on so strong to end the season, but like I just feel like there's still another level he can get to, because I just feel like only people in Utah really know how special Sione Vaki was in stretches last season and has the potential to be. So I just think there's a lot more people in the college football world who don't know about Sione Vaki yet, who will by the end of the season. So I think he qualifies as a breakout candidate, but you guys can let me know in the comments overall. So those are kind of the ones just 10 days out that stand out to me about the biggest questions I hope to hear an answer on, or just I'm curious to see what Coach Witt is going to say at Pac-12 Media Days. Let me know what your guys' are in the comments. And speaking of the comments, one thing that of course has been very active in the comments, and it's been a very popular topic for conversation on this podcast and various other podcasts on the Locked On networks, is the Pac-12 media rights deal. And it's still not done. I'm recording this on Wednesday. You guys will listen to it Thursday. I don't expect it to be done by the time this drops. And at this point, And I know we had Spencer McLaughlin on, and he's talked about it at length on his own show. He just said, and he's right. I wouldn't want to go into Pac-12 Media Day if I'm Commissioner Kliakoff with a non-completed Pac-12 media deal, because you're going to be asked constant questions about it. I wouldn't want that to happen. But at this point, isn't that just what it seems like it's going to happen? At first, I was like, yeah, it's going to get done. But as we just get closer and closer, I don't see it. So I think that is going to be the case. Is he's going to be answering questions. He's going to do the thing that we just talked about Coach Witt does. NFL GMs are very good at this as well. Watch an NFL GM press conference and you'll be amazed at how much they can say while also telling you nothing, because those guys are very smart and they know how to play the media. And Commissioner Kliakoff, who's very savvy in the business world, knows how to say one thing and kind of keep his cards close to the vest, right? As a businessman who does those business deals and all those type of things. I just think that he's very used to having to not divulge things, and that he's going to, if the media deal's not done, do a good job of kind of not really giving the public or the media in general information on where they're at, because that's not what they've done. I'm sure he'll just continue to say the same thing, right? We're close. We expect it to be done very shortly. All those kind of things, just as exactly what was relayed back in March at the Pac-12 basketball tournament, which is crazy to look back on that we're still in this position, but it's something that doesn't feel like it's going to go away. I feel like we're kind of going to stay in this position, and we're just going to kind of continue to deal with the whole media rights deal situation for the short time being. At this point, I don't even know what's going to be done. I'm done speculating. I mean, what did I say back in March? It'll be done by April, or it'll be done by the end of the month. I mean, and everything. I'm sure I've made other predictions too at this point. I'm sure I've said that they'll get it done by June 30th, all those things. At this point, I mean, look at any prediction you see on Twitter. No matter the analyst or source, whatever, they've been wrong pretty much. I haven't seen anyone from the start of this say oh, this Pac-12 media rights deal is going to drag on. I haven't seen that. So I don't expect it to change at this point. I'm done giving predictions on it. I'm just going to wait. And when it comes out and when it happens, we'll talk about it. Now we'll speculate on it a little bit more, I'm sure, on this podcast, because look, the media rights deal, of course, is very important. It's a huge impact on Utah's future in the Pac-12, or potentially, if it was low enough, potentially the reason they would leave for another conference, something I don't expect to happen, but still very well could. So there is a lot up in the air still when it comes to Pac-12 media rights deal, and still the big dark cloud that kind of hangs over the conference, when instead we should be getting excited about a great football season. We talk about Utah's chances to three-peat. Caleb Williams making another run at the Heisman. Michael Penix could have a Heisman campaign of his own. Washington could be really good. Oregon and Bo Nix and Dan Lanning, what they're put together. Oregon State with DJ Uiagalelei. There's just a lot of UCLA retooling, some of the stuff Arizona's doing. There are so many, and that's without even mentioning Deion Sanders at Colorado, which could be the biggest story in the entire conference this coming season. There are so many great and fascinating storylines in the Pac-12 conference that are going to be really exciting to cover, that have been kind of overshadowed by the media rights deal. And rest assured, for those of you who have been listening to this podcast and you're like, I'm tired of media rights deal coverage, well, I'm sure I'll touch on it once again a couple times. But trust me when I say, once the season gets going, this is a Utah football podcast, and we are going to be talking about Utah football first and foremost, rather than speculating on when a deal will get done that none of us have any idea, because we're not in the room. We're not the decision makers on that subject. So either way, I'm curious about when the deal will get done, but I don't expect it to be at the Pac-12 Media Rights Day anymore. So I'm ready for Commissioner Kliakoff to just get up there and continue to say, we're getting close. We're not finalizing. We're getting close. We're taking the right steps necessary. General talk like that says that's just basically what they've kind of maintained throughout the entire process, and doesn't really tell us anything about when the date of the deal will actually be finalized. So that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Utes. We'll be back with you tomorrow talking all things Utah football. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every single day. If this is your first time, make sure you guys like and subscribe, and I greatly appreciate you sticking around to the end as well. But that's going to do it. We'll see you tomorrow.